so we're looking at different nose types, different nose shapes. Some of you might not see your nose featured up here, but these are kind of the building blocks noses that we could look at and be able to see where our nose falls in on that kind of nose spectrum. So basically, the first one, we're taking a somewhat small ball of clay, and we're going to roll 2 other small balls of clay, and we're going to have that one bigger size right in the middle. You want to check and see that the clay is the same size on both sides so that your phalanges, your little sides that protect your nostrils, are going to be the right size. Right? So you can kind of mush those together, push on the edges, flatten out the nose, smooth out any wrinkles that you see. And you can feel free to work along with this tutorial. So you can take your clay out and your wear board and kind of start molding what you see up there on the board. If you see any abnormalities, you can just pinch parts off. And you're just trying to compress the sides to the center ball as much as you can. And you want to make everything a little bit bigger to begin with, because you're going to be carving away and adding on till things look perfect. It's better to start off with too much clay so that you can remove more. Okay. So then you're going to roll a new ball for the new little nose shape. And 2 more smaller balls to be the phalanges. I realized I did it wrong, so I flipped them over. Right, on the second one down, the nostril phalanges are a little bit lower. On the first one, I realized that those nostril phalanges are kind of in the middle. So if you have a higher set of nostril phalanges and your nose pokes down a little bit lower than your nostril height, then that would be the right nose shape for you. And the more you practice making these forms, the easier it becomes. And the nice thing about shaping a nose versus drawing a nose is that you're actually working 3-dimensionally already. And then this next nose is kind of like a little triangle-shaped nose. So if you have like a little pointy nose, maybe you have a little bit more of a petite shape. Maybe your nostrils are underneath the big ball of your nose and you have kind of narrow phalanges on the sides. This might be the little nostril shape for you. So you're basically starting off with a triangular shape, almost like a cat's nose. And when you look at it from the side, it looks a little bit like a mountain, with one side just a little bit longer and more slopey. And then if you have a really pokey nose, you can make it more pointed. Try not to exaggerate it. Some people make really pointy witch elf noses when your nose is actually not quite so witch-like. And then I'm just using my fingers to kind of push away at the bottom and create little nostrils for myself. And then if the tip of it is looking too long, you can always push that up or cut it off. And like I said, when you're putting on the initial stages of clay, it's better to go for too much when it's on your actual bust. because you're going to let that dry out. And once it's drying out and it's leather hard, that's when you get to carve it down and really shape it. These are kind of your just basic building blocks for noses. The last one is like a wide, kind of round, wide and flat nose that doesn't have quite the pronounced ball in the middle, and the nostril phalanges aren't quite as flaring. So you can make yourself a nice little oval-shaped potato, and you kind of start wedging with your fingers to create the shape of, again, like a little hill. And you can smooth down the edges to create the illusion that the nose is sloping from the middle down to the phalange. I'm pushing in to just kind of create two little nostrils, and then pushing down to flatten the phalange on the side. And then just really fussing about when in reality you would do most of this as carving. But I wanted to give you a chance to kind of start shaping with your fingers today. It'd be really hard to carve clay when it's at this stage. Really all you can do in the plastic phase is kind of shape it and get the general basis form. And then in a few days, once it starts to dry out a little bit more, you can start carving away. And then for some reason, I'm just not on camera for a while. Now we get a nice close-up. I'm trying to smooth out little bumps where I can, but we have really great tools so that if you do have really lumpy surfaces, we're gonna smooth everything down. So don't go too crazy right now, but think about really just trying to hone whatever the shape is. And then flattening things to a point. That way you can see more of the shadow. And then the last one is kind of like the one we just did, except smaller. And the nostril phalange is really narrow on this one. So it's a little bit more like the third one down where we have the triangular shape, and it's a little bit like the cat nose, except we're trying to go for slightly more rounded, a little less pointed. And then tools are super helpful. Right, really picking that nose. Digging for gold. Especially on smaller noses, you kind of have to enunciate and exaggerate the nostrils so that they're more visible. The hole itself has to be kind of the dominator of the form. And then when you look at it from other angles, you see, oh yeah, that does look a little bit more like a nose and less like just a little mushroom cap. And then I'm going to show creating the nose bridge. So that's great if you're making some little nose bases, but you need the top of your nose as well. So it's kind of like creating a cone, except the cone is going to be flat on one side, and then it tapers down. And anytime you're working with clay, when it's wet like this, the goal is to just compress and compress and compress. Smoothing down will help you compress things. Yeah, just basically shaping it into a cone that is totally flat on one side and a little bit raised up on the bottom. And then you can kind of press in on those nostrils. And then you can alter that to match whatever nostril shape you actually have and connect that to similar bridge. And if you have like a big hawk beak nose, maybe you would bulge right in the middle if it's crooked or if it's perfectly straight. Those are things that you just want to pay attention to while you're creating that bridge. But when you're starting, you're just going to basically plop it on like a big triangle of clay.